Gentlemen, think you know your wife inside and out. Well, what if I told you there are silent signals she's already cheating on you and you've been completely blind to them? These signals are hiding in plain sight, right under your nose, and I'm about to reveal them. Pay close attention, because these red flags could save you from a painful truth. But before we dive in, hit that like button if you want these raw truths shared with men who need to wake up. And don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening content. Where are you watching from? Let me know your city in the comments. Signal 1, the sudden surge of confidence. Let's get straight to it, because this one's a big one. Sudden overconfidence. The moment you start noticing your wife walking around like she's on top of the world, it's not just a coincidence. There's a change in her. Something has shifted. She suddenly acts like she's the most desired woman in the room. And it doesn't take long before you realize this new attitude isn't just confidence. It's a performance. Now, don't get me wrong. We all have our moments of feeling good about ourselves. But when your wife starts acting too confident, that's where you need to start paying attention. The first thing you'll notice is her wardrobe. She'll be dressing differently, a little too provocatively. That's right. Suddenly, she's pulling out outfits she hasn't worn in years. Tops with plunging necklines, jeans that hug her in all the right places, heels she forgot even existed in the back of the closet. These aren't just style updates. This is a woman who wants to feel noticed, and she's using her appearance to get that attention. But it doesn't stop there. Oh no, the change extends beyond the clothes. Her body language is different too. She's walking with a new sway, almost as if she's announcing to the world, "I know I wanted." You'll notice her posture change. More assertive, standing taller, as if she's constantly aware of her power. And when she talks, suddenly there's more energy in her voice, a little more flirtation, a little more playfulness. She'll start engaging with people, especially men, in a way that's just off. She's making eye contact, leaning in a little too much, laughing a little too loudly. I had a client who told me I thought my wife was just coming out of her shell. She used to be shy, but now she's this totally different person. She was flirting with waiters, making my friends laugh, leaning in like she knew them forever. That's not coming out of her shell. That's a woman who's tasting what it feels like to be the center of attention. And she likes it. Psychologically, this is happening because infidelity is a huge ego boost. It gives her a new sense of self-worth. She's been desired by someone else, and that attention becomes a drug. It's like a shot of adrenaline for her ego, the excitement, the thrill, the validation. It all feeds into a new self-image. And trust me, this isn't about self-esteem. This is about showing off a new version of herself that's been validated by someone else. So pay attention. If she's strutting around like a different person, that sudden change is not just a coincidence. It's a red flag, and it's one you shouldn't ignore. Signal 2, unexplained irritability. One of the most immediate and noticeable signs that something is wrong in the relationship is unexplained irritability. It's when things that never bothered her before suddenly become major sources of frustration. You might notice that the smallest things, like the way you leave your shoes in the hallway, how you eat your food, or even how you speak, seem to set her off. You've been doing these things for years without a problem, but now she can't seem to tolerate them. It's as if every little thing you do becomes an issue, and no matter how hard you try to fix it, the irritation just keeps escalating. What's happening here isn't about you suddenly becoming annoying, it's about her internal guilt manifesting outwardly. After infidelity, she's dealing with deep internal conflict, and her subconscious needs to manage that guilt somehow. Guilt projection is a psychological mechanism where, rather than confronting the guilt of her actions, she shifts the blame onto someone else. In this case, onto you. By focusing on your habits and flaws, she can convince herself that the relationship problems are your fault. If you're the one who's flawed, it makes her actions easier to justify, even if she knows deep down that what she did was wrong. This irritability often appears at moments of closeness or intimacy. You might try to reach out to her emotionally or physically, but instead of the affection or closeness you used to get, she recoils. It's as if she's irritated by anything that reminds her of the bond you once shared. She might snap at you when you try to touch her or show affection, as if the physical closeness itself is now unbearable. The reason for this is that her mind is subconsciously trying to distance herself emotionally, even while she's physically still in the relationship. Her irritability becomes a way to protect herself from the guilt of her actions. If she can make you feel like you're the problem, it alleviates some of the emotional burden she's carrying. It's not about you changing. It's about her creating an emotional barrier between you two to justify what she's done. If you notice that her irritation is increasingly frequent and seems to come out of nowhere, don't dismiss it. This is a major sign that something deeper is happening. When your every move irritates her, it's not just a coincidence. It's a clear indication that guilt, defensiveness, and emotional distance are all at play. This behavior needs to be addressed because it's likely masking a much larger issue in the relationship. Signal 3, forced sweetness and overcompensating behavior. All right, buckle up because this one might fool you. Forced sweetness, a behavior so exaggerated it almost feels like a performance. Suddenly, she's treating you like a king, doing things she never did before, acting as if she's the perfect wife. But here's the catch: it's not genuine. This is overcompensating behavior, and it's one of the clearer signs that something's off. Now, you've been in a relationship long enough to know when your wife's being real with you, but if she suddenly starts showering you with gifts, making your favorite meals just because, or telling you I love you way more than usual, it's forced. It's like she's trying to convince both herself and you that everything is fine. Let me paint the picture for you. You come home after a long day at work and suddenly she's cooking your favorite meal. Not the usual routine, but an elaborate dinner, like she's trying to impress you. She's smiling too much and she's saying things like, I've been such a good wife lately, haven't I? Or I really hope you're noticing how much I care about you. You might even think, wow, this is a nice change, but that's exactly the problem. It's too much. This is what psychologists call compensatory behavior. Her subconscious is trying to make up for what she's done. She feels guilty, and her way of dealing with that guilt is by being excessively sweet, affectionate, and helpful. She might even go out of her way to do things she never did before, hoping that this will balance out the wrong she's done. But let me be clear, this isn't love. It's a performance. Look for the artificiality in the way she behaves. The smiles might seem a little too wide, the compliments too frequent, and the affection too deliberate. It's like she's trying to convince you that she's the perfect wife, but something just doesn't feel right. Maybe she's suddenly going out of her way to do things she used to refuse, like offering to watch your favorite show, or going on weekend trips with you when she never showed interest before. A client of mine once said, "At first I thought we were having a second honeymoon. She was so affectionate, suddenly making me breakfast, saying she loved me every day. But it felt off, like she was trying too hard." And that's the thing, guilt makes her act like this, trying to prove she's still a good person, even though deep down she knows she's not. So pay attention to this forced sweetness. If it feels like she's overdoing it, it's not love. It's a desperate attempt to make up for what she's already done. And trust me, this is one signal you don't want to ignore. Signal 4, the detachment. If you notice emotional detachment, it's a sign that something in the relationship has fundamentally changed. This shift often happens gradually, but once you start recognizing it, it's impossible to ignore. When she no longer reacts to things that used to trigger an emotional response, you're seeing her distance herself. And it's a serious red flag. The first area you'll notice this is in her response to your struggles. In the past, she might have been the first to listen, offer comfort, or try to help when things were tough. Now, when you share something important, whether it's work stress, family issues, or personal challenges, she might show no empathy. If you've had a hard day or are going through a difficult moment, you're met with an indifferent or most emotionless response. Instead of offering support, she brushes it off, saying something like, "You'll figure it out," or "It's not that big of a deal." It feels like your pain or frustration no longer matters to her. This detachment will also show in conflict situations. When you argue, there's no more fire or energy in her reactions. It's as if she's already checked out emotionally. Rather than defending herself or trying to work through the disagreement, she remains eerily calm, perhaps offering one-word answers or a resigned whatever. You'll start feeling like you're speaking to a wall. This isn't just a sign of stress or fatigue. It's a sign that she's emotionally distant and no longer invested in resolving the issue or protecting the relationship. Another major sign of detachment is the lack of jealousy. If she used to care about your interactions with other women, whether it was friends, coworkers, or acquaintances, and suddenly she shows no interest or even indifference when they're mentioned, it's a clear sign she's emotionally disconnected. If a year ago she'd have asked who you were talking to, and now she barely reacts when you mention someone else, it shows she's mentally and emotionally disengaged. When you start feeling like you're talking to a stranger, or when major life events don't provoke any response from her, that's the moment you know she's emotionally moved on. Detachment isn't temporary. It's the beginning of an irreversible emotional separation. She's no longer invested in the relationship, and her emotional disengagement is her way of protecting herself from the guilt of the betrayal she's already committed. Signal 5, the shift in priorities. One of the most telling and subtle signs of trouble is when her priorities suddenly shift. You start noticing that the time, energy, and attention she once gave to the relationship are now being spent elsewhere. This shift doesn't always happen overnight, but when it does, it's hard to ignore. She's putting more effort into things that don't involve you. Things like her work, her hobbies, or suddenly spending more time with friends. At first, you might think it's just a phase. Maybe she's just busy with work or trying to get her social life back on track. But it becomes clear over time that her emotional investment in the relationship has started to fade. She's not prioritizing you, your shared time, or the connection you once had. Instead, she's becoming more focused on her own needs and desires, leaving you to fend for yourself. The first sign of this shift is the increasing amount of time she spends away from home. Whether it's staying late at the office, running errands with friends, or engaging in new hobbies, you find yourself spending more and more time alone. She might say it's just a phase or she needs some space. But if this behavior becomes the norm, it's a clear indicator that she's pulling away. You might ask if she wants to spend the weekend together, but she's always got an excuse ready. I've got plans with friends, or I need to catch up on some things. What's happening here is that she's mentally and emotionally disconnecting from you. As her priorities shift, your relationship isn't at the top of her list anymore. The most disturbing part is that when she's not around, she seems to be doing just fine without you. You begin to realize she's no longer as invested in the emotional connection you once shared. She's filling the void with other things, and those things are becoming more important to her than the life you two built together. This shift is often accompanied by a lack of emotional engagement. When you try to talk about your day, your frustrations, or your feelings, she might brush it off or seem uninterested. The deep conversations you once had are replaced by small talk, and you start to feel like you're living with a stranger. When you suggest doing something together or revisiting old memories, she shows little enthusiasm, as if the idea just doesn't excite her anymore. This detachment is a dangerous sign that she's already mentally checked out. If she's not willing to invest time, energy, or emotion into the relationship, it's not just about being busy. She's making space for someone or something else, and you're no longer her priority. It's time to acknowledge that something fundamental has shifted in her heart. And it might be too late to get back to what you once had. Signal 6, the accidental phone snooping. Let's talk about the phone and how suddenly protective she is of it. At first, you might brush it off as nothing, but pay close attention because this behavior is never random. If she's suddenly acting weird around her phone, there's a reason for it. It starts with subtle changes. You notice her phone lighting up more when you're not in the room. When you walk in, she immediately grabs it or turns the screen face down. You casually ask who's texting, and she quickly responds, just work, or it's nothing. But you're left with a gut feeling that something doesn't add up. Soon enough, it gets more obvious. Her phone is now always within arm's reach, even when she doesn't need it. She carries it from room to room, or it's tucked away in her pocket when she never used to be so attached. The phone is almost an extension of herself, and you're starting to wonder why she's so protective of it now. The worst part comes when you start catching her, changing the subject, or getting defensive when you ask about the phone. It's like she's expecting you to snoop, but doesn't want to get caught. If she's suddenly more careful than usual with her phone, it's a sign that there's something she doesn't want you to see. If you do manage to get a quick glance at her phone, you might find things that raise your suspicions. Maybe there are messages from someone you've never heard of, or there's a sudden increase in communication with people she's never mentioned. When you ask about it, she gives you vague or defensive answers, brushing it off as no big deal. But here's the truth. If her phone is suddenly her most guarded possession, it's not just coincidence. She's hiding something, maybe an emotional affair or worse. Trust your instincts here. These are clear signs she's trying to cover up something she doesn't want you to find out. Pay attention to the phone habits because they're often the biggest red flags. Signal 7, the cold phone and secret texting. Let's talk about the phone because it's not just about random changes in behavior. It's about the secrecy surrounding it. If you've noticed that her phone is suddenly off limits, you need to pay attention. This isn't about being paranoid. It's about spotting the clear signs that something's being hidden. It starts small. Maybe her phone lights up more often when you're not around, or she becomes overly protective of it. When you're near, she quickly turns the screen face down or leaves the room to check it. When you ask who's texting, she brushes it off as nothing important like work or a friend. But the secrecy feels wrong. Why the sudden urge to hide? As time goes on, it gets worse. Her phone becomes her constant companion, carried around even when she doesn't need it. It's almost like she's afraid of you seeing something. You might catch her texting late at night or when she's alone. When you ask about it, she offers a quick excuse, but there's no real explanation. She's defensive, and you can tell her reaction is forced. Now, here's the real issue. Secret texting. If she's messaging someone during odd hours, late at night, or when you're around, it's a clear sign of something off. Her response is a quick, like she's trying to cover up something. And if you happen to glance at her phone, you might see strange names or messages that make you uncomfortable. Flirty comments or inside jokes that don't involve you. She'll act like it's nothing, but her nervousness says otherwise. And there's only so much innocence you can attribute to this behavior. If she's suddenly glued to her phone, texting people you don't know, and avoiding your questions, it's more than a simple coincidence. She's hiding something, and it's not just a casual conversation. Her phone is now her biggest secret, and she's keeping it from you for a reason. These habits are red flags that can't be ignored. Pay attention to them. If you're seeing these signals, trust your instincts, because the truth is her behavior speaks louder than any words. And it's time to wake up before it's too late. See you in the next video.